The journey of tea. Hi, my name's Lucy and I'm going to take you on the journey of tea, from plantation to cup and from loose leaf to tea bag, and how it's our favourite drink in the world. So tea is drank all over the world and it's the second largest drink only to water. And in the UK, we in fact drink 165 million cups of it per day, which is quite a lot. So first let's talk about the tea plant. The tea plant is just one plant and it's called Camellia sinensis. And from that one plant, we have two main subspecies. These are grown in subtropical climates around the world. So the first one was discovered in China 5,000 years ago in 2737 BC by the Emperor Sheng Nung. And this one is called Camellia sinensis sinensis. It is a small-leafed, very hardy plant which likes growing at altitude. Makes really great fresh greens and whites, but all of the teas can be made from this plant. The second was discovered much later on in Assam, and that's why it's called the Camellia sinensis assamica. And it was discovered by a Scotsman called Robert Bruce. The Camellia sinensis assamica has larger leaves and it likes hotter climates, so that's where it was found in Assam, which is on the Brahmaputra River floodplain, and it's really hot and humid there. So it has massive leaves and it makes really strong, full-flavoured black teas. So the Camellia sinensis sinensis, which is the Chinese variety, is a small shrub and has many branches, whereas the assamica has a single trunk and can grow up to heights of 30 feet. Tea likes a lot of rain, but also likes a nice warm humid climate. Both plants have a shallow root system and they like acidic soil, and that gives you that really crisp acidic flavour. So let's talk about the manufacturing process, how we get from that plant to our cup. So in tea there's in fact 6 different types of tea, so that means 6 different types of manufacturing process. But each and every one has to start at the beginning, which is the hand plucking. So in Twinings, we favour this method because it's kinder to the leaves and it's kinder to the environment as a whole. Basically, if you had a hedge trimmer and you just cut up your garden, it wouldn't grow back very healthily. So that's kind of what machine harvesting does to it. Plantations will only last for half the time of hand plucking, and the soil will also be undernourished and won't rejuvenate quick enough. So we prefer the hand plucking to give us fantastic quality, and it gives us no fibres in the finished product, so giving you a higher quality brew. There are 4 main types of pluck. We have the bud, which is just the single tip of the leaf. Then we have the bud and we have the leaf, which is called fine plucking. And then we have the bud with 2 leaves, which is called medium plucking. And then we have the bud with 3 leaves, and that's called coarse plucking. To start with, most leaves go through a withering process. The withering process is to lose some moisture so that we don't break the leaves and expose their natural juices to the oxygen, which will force oxidization, and that's not what we want to happen yet. Then some of them go through a rolling process. This breaks the cells, enabling the oxidation process to happen. That oxidation process is there for the flavors to develop. So in black teas and oolongs, we break the cells, the oxygen mixes with the enzymes within the tea, and this breaks it down and gives you that lovely brown flavour, and that's where you get those theobromines and theaflavins coming out in your tea to give you lots of flavour compounds. Then finally, all tea must dry, otherwise they will wither away to nothing and we will have no tea. So they're normally dried either in the sunshine or in hot ovens to lock in that flavour and freshness. Twinings don't own any tea gardens. That enables us to buy the very, very best tea from auctions and different tea gardens directly to ensure that you get the very best quality year on year. Our master blenders will also taste that tea 7 times from plantation just before it gets to your cup to ensure that every cup of tea tastes as good as the last. Like I was telling you, there are 6 different types of tea made from those 2 bushes, from the Sinensis sinensis, which is the Chinese, and the Assamica, which is the Indian. We have white, yellow, green, oolong, black, and pu'er. Now you might not have heard of all of these, but it's really interesting to know about them. Black tea is the most drank tea in the world, and how we make that is we pluck the leaves and we wither them overnight in these huge, great big troughs to make sure that we lose a lot of moisture. Black tea was developed in the 1600s by the Ming Dynasty, and it was actually to complement the European palate. So in fact, black tea is the youngest of all of the teas. Also, in China, black tea is called red tea. It's due to the color of the liquor, which is when the tea is brewed in the cup. There are two main ways of making black tea. You have orthodox, which is the long, wiry whole leaf, and then you have CTC, which is cut, tear and curl. Basically, that means that tea goes through a process and it's minced up to make it small and it's enabled to brew quicker. So you'll find this sometimes in quick brewing teas and in tea bags. Green tea is becoming hugely popular because of its purported health benefits and younger generations realizing how fantastic it tastes. Green tea is always picked in spring and traditionally hand-plucked. Now, there are two main types of green tea and the processing methods. You have sencha, which means steamed, and you have the pan-fired. The steaming and the pan-firing are essentially to lock in the enzyme. So the green tea is a plant, it's green, and we want to keep it that way. And also it tastes like plants. So it's like freezing peas straight off the garden, locks in all the freshness. That's exactly what we're doing by the steaming and the pan firing. And then once they're steamed, we quickly dry them so that you've got this fresh, green, grassy taste and sweetness as well. And the pan-fired one is just slightly more vegetal, but still absolutely fantastic. Now, one of my favorites, white tea. White tea is not as well known as black and green teas, but it's still absolutely fantastic. It's always picked in spring, and you generally only pluck the bud and the first leaf. The highest quality white teas will be sun-dried, so you always pick the leaves in the morning, just as the dew has left the leaf, and then they're placed onto bamboo trays, half covered in sun and half in shade, so that they dry very, very slowly, and you get this very sweet flavour, and you'll see all the little white hairs come out on the tea. This was drank by emperors, and it's one of my favourites. So now to the rarest tea of all, yellow tea. So many people haven't heard of yellow tea because it takes quite a while to make, and green tea is quite quick to make. Emperors drank this and it's absolutely fantastic. So how you make it is the leaves are plucked in the morning and then they are put in a pan and gently heated. Then they are covered with a cloth. This is called sealing yellow. This enables the tea to release aromas and then reabsorb them, mellowing those grassy flavours out and bringing more nutty and honey tones to it. Then the tea master, who has been trained for years to be able to know when this is ready, will check it, put it back in the pan and repeat the process up to 3 times. Now this can take up to 3 days, so it takes a little bit longer. And the master, he is the one who says it's done. When it's finished, it is then taken to be dried, either in hot ovens or in the sunshine, and that's your finished product. On to oolongs. Oolongs are fantastic, and actually it means black dragon in Chinese. So there's 2 main ways of making oolong. You have your dark and you have the green oolongs. They are also known as blue teas and wulang. They're traditionally made in China and Taiwan. So let's start with the green tea, the green oolong processing. They're picked, and it's picked later on in the year just to get more of a full flavour. And then what happens is they're withered. And like I said before, they're withered to lose moisture and to make them pliable. Once we've withered them to the desired amount, we are now ready to shake and bruise them. So if you have an apple and you drop it with the skin on, you put it back in your fruit basket and you leave it, it will go brown underneath the skin. That is exactly what we want to happen with the oolong. We bruise it in bamboo trays by shaking them very, very gently, and it's highly skilled and sometimes painstaking task because you have to know exactly when it's ready. And for a green one, you only want to bruise it very, very lightly, because otherwise it will oxidize and turn brown. So for some oolongs, you only want to do this about 12%. So these people are very highly skilled. Once bruised, we leave it to the oxygen. That's oxidization. The oxygen mixing with the enzyme to break it down and turn it slightly brown. For the Taiwanese oolongs, 12%, and for the Chinese, 35%. And they just give different flavors. Once that's done, we dry it. The drying is there to fix those enzymes and stop that process from happening even more, the oxidization. Left overnight to reabsorb some moisture. In the morning, it's picked up and put into cloth sacks where it's rolled. And it's rolled up to 60 times to create a really tight ball. Then, when that's finished, it's dried again to seal that ball shape into place. This once brewed, gives you a really fantastic floral, nutty, grassy, all sorts of amazing flavors, and is absolutely wonderful with savory food. Let's talk about the dark oolong. So it starts life out the same as the green one. It's plucked and then it's withered to lose the moisture. And for a dark one, as you can imagine, we oxidize it more. So it goes through the same process. It is bruised and then left to oxidize. And this is up to about 75%. Then, again, must be dried to arrest the oxidation process. Now, these are some of my favorite teas as well, and they give you soft honey tones and a slightly more taste of the black tea, but not too much, and they're absolutely wonderful. Last but not least, out of the 6 teas is Pu'er. Pu'er is actually a fermented tea. Now, the reason this is fermented is because of the special climatic conditions and microclimate that it's in. You can only make Pu'er from the Yunnan province in southwest China. And the tea is grown in these tea forests with trees all around. And there's a special spore of mold and fungus that floats around in the air and actually lands on the leaf. So when we process it, it ferments it. And these can age for up to 150 years and can be some of the most expensive teas in the world. So once made, it's actually very like forest floor, and it's absolutely gorgeous and slightly sweet. So let's talk about flavored teas. We all have heard and probably tasted these. This includes Earl Grey, Lady Grey, English breakfast, and the list goes on. Basically, you take one of those 6 teas and you add a flavor. So white, yellow, green, oolong, black, and sometimes Pu'er. And you can add jasmine, you can have flowers, spices, all sorts of different flavors to these teas, and that is essentially what a flavored tea is. So now on to infusions. Infusions aren't in fact tea. They do not contain any of the Camellia sinensis plant, so therefore they do not contain any caffeine. So an infusion is simply a root, a herb, a spice, a flower, or a fruit, which is put into a cup with hot water. So the association with tea is there, and that's why sometimes we say it's a mint tea, etc. But in fact, there is no tea, so we just call them an infusion. So lastly, we'll talk about rooibos or red bush. This is grown in West South Africa, and the leaves are basically oxidized. This has no caffeine, but is very, very high in antioxidants. So I hope that's giving you some insight into the tea and its different origins and how it's got to your cup. So next time when you're sat drinking it, you'll know where it all came from. Enjoy!